Welcome to the Awesemo Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal EMac coming to you after a nice long hiatus here. Well, I don't know that the hiatus was nice. It was certainly long. We had a little bit of a pandemic, if those of you haven't noticed, but sports is coming back. The Big Four on their way to return. We have MLB with opening day on Thursday, July 23rd. Got a treat for all of you guys and gals that are listening tonight. A new co-host with me. You bet know him best from the chat as TMcB. Is that right? No, it's not. It's TMcB. It's Terry McBride. Terry, welcome to your first ever Awesemo podcast.
Hey, Mac, how's it going? I'm really psyched to be here and really looking forward to digging into this with you and joining the team.
Absolutely. It should be a lot of fun. Now, for those of you, you probably start to remember the moniker TMcB73. That's Terry's handle in the YouTube chat and, of course, in Slack. But he also does write all of our KBO content. So you've been doing yeoman's work here, getting up early, staying up late. I'm not sure what you're doing. I meant to ask you, tell me a little bit about the KBO life here, because I played for the first week, got the ticket that DraftKings was giving away for playing $50 in the first week, broke even and said, I'm out. I can't keep waking up, because 3 of the days I uploaded my lineups incorrectly and had people that were out, and then I missed all of those rain delay days. But how have you been soldiering along here?
Yeah, I tell you what, it has been an adventure. It's been a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed getting into the swing of just writing things up for the site and covering baseball and just having a sport to follow. During all this crazy pandemic and with everything off all this time, it was really good to just have some baseball to watch. And it's a 10-team league, and 5 games a day every single day, except for Mondays when they're off. And just finding new and creative ways to write up the same group of hitters from only 10 teams every day was always an adventure. And then, like you said, being up at 5:30 in the morning for that lock was kind of a killer. I keep really weird hours anyway, but that was an adventure. I was doing well in the slates that I was awake for, and then the slates that I overslept the lock by a few minutes, I tended to lose quite a bit. So it was an adventure. It was a lot of fun, not as profitable as it could have been, but it was a blast seeing all the winners that we had and a lot of people at the top of GPP standings, a lot of good screenshots. So I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, there was a very vibrant group of people up early in the chat every morning or staying up late. And then I think it's Saturday nights they locked at like 1 a.m. Eastern time, it seemed like. I thought, oh, I could try to stay up for that. Yeah, that wasn't even going to happen for me. So had to give that up. But we're back to normal USA MLB baseball. Got a promo code for you. I'm giving this one out because this one is going to last just through Friday, July 24th. The promo code is Manfred, as in the commissioner of the Major League Baseball League. Nice redundancy there. Hey, come on. Been off for 120 days here. We're gonna have a little hiccup here and there. But Manfred, Manfred, what does that get you? Well, it gets you 50% off your first month of MLB DFS content here. You get everything soup to nuts, the projections for players, ownership projections, top stack tools, the premium articles behind the paywall. Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on to this. That's separate, but you get 50% off, so that works out to $25 for 31 days. Now, this season, regular season, is going to last for just shy of 70 days, as the teams are going to play 60 games. Everybody has like 1 day off per week, essentially. So with the start and with a little tail on the end there, we're going to get about 65 to 70 days of baseball. Most days are going to give us 2 solid slates. Some of those will be early during the week. Looks like a lot of Saturday slates are going to really start at 6 or 7 o'clock outside of week 1, but we're going to have you covered with Awesemo content. You get the YouTube shows. Those are going to be free, but again, all the good stuff behind the paywall. That's promo code Manfred. Gets you 50% off your 31 days of Awesemo baseball. It's only going to cost you $25. All right, Terry. Well, let's talk a little bit here. Tiny bit of game theory. There's 2 games. There are no sneaky spots on 2-game slates. There are gigantic contests out on DraftKings and FanDuel. Both have $1 million contests. Again, there are 4 teams in action. It's going to be very tough. fingers crossed, we'll talk about it in a minute, but there's a little bit of weather in Washington, D.C. That game gets postponed, and we don't have a slate because you got to have at least 2 games to have a slate. So all sorts of things are going to be interesting. We have 3 really good pitchers going today. Well, 2 really, really good. One on a little bit of a downslope. That's Clayton Kershaw, but he's still pretty phenomenal. And then we've got Johnny Cueto, who's not horrible. Everybody's going to want to go Cueto against Cueto with lefties for the Dodgers. If you want to hold hands with everybody across the finish line, hat tip to Manny Laura for that phrase, then go for it. Otherwise, we're going to need to get a little bit different somewhere that can happen. Whole point here, keep your powder dry because we have 26 teams in action on Friday and nearly equally sized prize pools. So don't blow it all on Thursday, but we'll have some fun. Now, Terry, a lot of people don't realize this, but you're kind of dabbling a little bit of content now and made a little bit of a change. And you're between, pandemic and a few other things, a couple nice wins there for you. You're doing a little bit more full-time DFS. You've been thrifty with your bankroll. You've been smart about things here, except when you're oversleeping KBO. But hey, who can blame anybody for that? What are your thoughts when you approach a 2-game slate like this with gigantic? I mean, you have to beat out like 950,000 people, and you're gonna double your money on the DraftKings and FanDuel contests. Yikes!
Yeah. So with 2 games on the slate, it just becomes such a challenge to make unique lineups, like you're saying, and you're going to be walking across that finish line with 1,000 other people if you're playing all those Dodgers lefties and they hit. There's just no bones about it. It's a great spot, it's a great stack, but you don't want to be making those lineups because you don't want to be sharing the winnings with everybody. So we need to be able to find different angles into this slate. We need to be able to find different angles into the stack and with stacks and see if we can pick something off. That's a low owned, high opportunity spot that people are overlooking because they're not necessarily tuned in with everything MLB. It's very easy to click on some of those Dodgers and some of those Yankees. They're 2 of the most popular teams, if not the most popular in the league. So everybody's going to be going in that direction. We're going to have to find some different angles on this thing, and it's going to be tricky because with only 4 pitchers, it's very limited things that you can do up top and very limited constructions that you can get to. So it's going to be an interesting slate from a game theory perspective. I think you're very right about maybe focusing more of your bankroll if you're on a limited budget toward the Friday slate and getting a little bit of a spot where you can get a little bit more different than the field and get away from some of these big chalky plays. But if you're intent on playing everything tomorrow, I would say your best bet, find a slate that's at your price range and max enter it because you're going to want to get as much of the variance as possible and pick up as many of these different opportunities as you can and hope that one of them connects and hope that not that many other people are on it.
Yep, and that's kind of and we'll talk about it as we go through. So the Early Bird podcast, normally we focus on pitching, run it from the really good ones to the mediocre ones to the gas cans, and that's how we know which teams we're going to want to talk about or target. So that's kind of how we do this. Since there are just 4 teams in action, we'll take a little bit of a different approach and break this down a little bit more because a lot of this is going to come down to decisions, a little bit of what people like to call game theory, which doesn't, it's not always the best term, but basically it means you need to have a strategy or a plan. And a lot of times in baseball, you're going to look at something that's called leveraging against the field. Now in basketball, if you have, a starting point guard out, whoever's stepping in for them, if they're going to get 30, 35 minutes, they're going to be a good play no matter what. You're out on the court, you're accumulating points. That's phenomenal. Probably a good point per dollar. Baseball entirely different. Hitters are going to get 4 or 5 attempts to score. Pitchers, and this is what I want to kind of lead us into. Pitchers, we don't really know what's going to happen. Pitchers this year are going to make about 12 starts, is how it's going to math out. The interesting thing is they're not coming off of a full spring training. Remember, everybody was ramped up. We were less than a week away, or about a week away from opening day when things got shut down in March. So everybody ramped down. Now they're trying to ramp back up. It would not be a shock if even Scherzer and Garrett Cole go 85, 90 pitches, and that's all they're going. Now Scherzer, Bulldog, gets mad as a whole. I've been reading a great book about the Nationals, world champion Nationals, I should add. And it's just phenomenal, kind of getting into his mindset and what he's doing. But this is game one of a sprint season. If anybody gets hurt, anybody has a little twinge, something like that, Terry, they're going to be out for on the 10-day injured list. That is 20% of the season. Yikes.
Right. That becomes huge. I think, I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of protection on these pitchers. I think they're going to, and all players really, if anybody gets dinged up in the slightest way, they're going to miss too much of the season, so much that they're going to be rendered almost irrelevant. So I think we're going to see a ton of teams going to bullpens early and often. We're going to see early hooks from managers, even more so than we've seen over the last few years. And we've seen managers get really aggressive with how quickly they're hooking starting pitchers anyway, under normal circumstances, getting those bullpen arms into those high leverage spots, to protect leads in even the sixth inning. And we see pitchers get mad about it and miss out on those quality starts and not want to come out of games. But the numbers support getting those bullpen arms and those power throwers into some of those high leverage spots. So it makes a lot of sense. And now with the addition of the 60-game schedule and the ridiculous sprint that we're going to have and the anything goes, who knows what's going to happen kind of a season that we're going to have, we're going to see a lot of teams that are contending, a lot of teams that are trying to protect leads in the divisional chase and the wild card. So I think we're going to see a ton of bullpen arms and a ton of wildly unpredictable starting pitching.
Yep. Now, what that means is the other point I'm going to get to here is don't worry this first day, especially on a two-pitcher site, like DraftKings, Yahoo, etc. Don't worry about taking 2, even 3 hitters against your starting pitcher in these tournaments. You are hoping that the damage is done against the bullpen, which is totally possible. Your starter may only go 5 innings, and there are only 4 starters. You could still pick Kershaw or Garrett Cole, take a couple guys against them. They maybe don't do so great in those 5 innings, but all of a sudden they tee off on somebody in the bullpen. We're trying to, luck into a home run or 2. Maybe there's only a couple on this slate. That's what we're trying to capture here. So this is going to be one of the more unique slates that we've seen, in that the contests are so darn large and there are so many people in them. This is like any other normal short slate, late night West Coast slate. We're going to get tons of these 2-gamers, 3-gamers, etc. We're not going to get them with this large a field tournaments. So you have to approach this slightly differently. And God bless anybody playing the single game contest, because all eyes are going to be on this. So leading into our first pitcher here, we've got Johnny Cueto. So kind of the background here on him. In the last 2 seasons, he has just 69 innings. That's nice, I guess, if you're into numerology. But in those innings, 6.65 Ks per 9, 4.9 FIP, 4.6 xFIP. So what that's trying to do is normalize the defense out a little bit. He's pitching in Oracle Park. That's going to suppress home runs just a little bit. It's lefties that have been going after Cueto. So this is why everybody's going to look at the phenomenal Dodger lefties. He's faced 131 lefties in the last 2 seasons. 2.25 home run per 9 rate, only a 17% strikeout rate. That's kind of tough. So start us off there. Talk to us a little bit about Cueto, the theory of playing him, and then who you're going to want to go with against him. The world is now your oyster. The training wheels are off.
Here we go. So Cueto's a tricky one, right? It's never going to be comfortable to play him. It's not something that you're going to like doing, especially against a lineup like these Dodgers. But in a spot like this with so many entries, it just makes sense to get some Cueto lineups into your life. Nobody's going to like what those numbers look like. But just based on the fact that you're going to need that leverage, if everybody owns those Dodgers in their lineups and Cueto by some miracle happens to post a decent game, even if he only goes 5-6 innings, happens to strike out a few guys and not give up the long ball that we're all expecting him to give up several of, you're going to need that point total to win. You're going to need that to be competitive at all, because all those Dodgers in everybody's lineups are going to be blanking and Cueto's going to be over the top. So if in this strange event that happens, that's what you want to capture, and that's going to be slate breaking. You're going to need it in that event. So I'm not entirely sure where to go for any other kind of differentiation in your pitching. The other 3 guys are going to be super popular. They're all great spots, great pitchers and low run totals in those games. So I really feel like getting to some Cueto, and I'm not sure how much, but I think I want to be over the field.
Now that's The good thing, we'll have the leverage tools, the ownership, etc. Awesemo does have some of the best ownership algorithms out there, and in baseball, unlike the other sports, this is where you really find tipping point. So you'll get we being the vast majority of DFS analysts will point out the Mike Trout will be popular a lot of slates, 35, maybe even 40%, depending on his matchup, what it is. There's a lot of games where Mike Trout is going to go 0 for 4. There's a lot of games where Mike Trout gets a single, a run scored, and 2 walks, and that's not going to do it for you as one of the highest paid or the highest DFS salaried players. So this is what we call leverage. Now you may have the weaker players, a Jeff Mathis and Andrelton Simmons, some of these guys that just keep the ball on the ground. Maybe it goes out of the infield. Those are the guys that sometimes maybe they get lucky. The old Crash Davis, the Gork, ground ball with eyes, dying quail. Go through the laundry list there. And hey, that's what happens. Hit them where they ain't. So we'll have to see. We also may get a little bit of news from some of the managers. You can kind of guess at who, once they've named their closers, look to the next best pitchers. I can't remember if everybody, I think everybody's tabbed their closers, but if you look at those next best pitchers, those guys are probably going to get in the game from the bullpen today. You could always go a little bit crazy and hope you get, a 3 strikeout game or, an inning in the third or whatever, and a couple of the other guys get roughed up. That's a potential differentiation play. All right, enough about that. Let's get to, I'm going to hit you with the other numbers here. Cody Bellinger. Hey, that name sounds familiar. Oh yeah, he's only the National League MVP. Won the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger last year. 4th in the league with 47 home runs. 10th with 115 RBIs and a 305 batting average. Yes, those are the normal back of the baseball card stats. Let's talk advanced metrics, Terry. 415 WOBA, that's weighted on base percentage. That's elite. 324 ISO. We see anybody gets up to that 190, 200 level, that's kind of like really good, and we want them in our lineups. 324, that's elite. A 162 runs created plus. Now, what runs created plus is, that's an advanced metric that measures how many runs are created above a league-wide baseline that is set at 100, and then they normalize it for park factors, defense, etc. So he scores 62%, or creates, not just scores, but creates 62% more runs than the average player. Wow, I want him in my lineup. So does everybody else. You've got Jacques Peterson, probably hitting 6th or 7th. Let that sink in for a moment. We have the DH. He's going to play a lot this year. We don't have to worry about pinch hitting too much because, it's there's no double switch or anything like that with the National League having the DH. And you can pinch hit for your DH, unlike with some double switches and things that happen where you can lose the DH. You can actually pinch hit for your DH. But then if that DH plays in the field, you lose the DH spot. So it'll be interesting to see what Dave Roberts does. But Jacques Peterson, over the last 2 seasons, he is, 3rd in home runs against righties with 60. That's in 743 at-bats. That's what works out to about a 54 home run rate per year. Do you like these 2 guys? Is there a reason to not play them?
So the answer to the first question is definitely yes. It would be insane to not like Cody Bellinger. He's one of the best hitters in the game. Those numbers that you read off are right on point. And you mentioned the 324 ISO, which is just an insanely high number. And ISO is achieved. You subtract batting average from slugging percentage. So sometimes you see outliers where a guy's got a really low batting average and a decent slugging percentage, and it drives his ISO up in a little bit of a weird way. But with Bellinger, you're talking about a guy who hit in that season 305. So that's a slugging percentage of 629. So this is a guy who just smokes the ball when he makes contact. And he's a guy you always want in your lineup. He's the heart of this team and really a core of this stack. The problem is, like you said, everybody wants him. Everybody's going to own him. So yeah, we do want him in there. He's the catalyst of this offense, but he's a guy that everybody's going to be on. So we have to figure out either interesting, unique combinations to use with him, or maybe figure out a way that we can skip him and try and pick off some of that other value. Like you just mentioned before in the Trout example, that's something that people really need to grasp about baseball. And it's a question that we tend to answer a lot. It's not like basketball where a guy's going to get minutes. He's going to get some points. If we know that somebody's playing 30 minutes, they're going to have a certain amount of points and a certain amount of rebounds. Even if they go 0 for 10 from the field, they're going to put up something, and that's going to be a big outlier game. In baseball, a guy like Cody Bellinger, one of the best players in the game, could come in looking like in a great spot and go 0 for 5 and completely disappoint and put up a big zero. So yeah, it's a play that I want to make. It's a guy I'm going to own in a lot of my Dodgers stacks, but there are ways that you can get around him, and there are ways that you can build. And that's a unique way to approach the slate and approach those really, really popular Dodgers bats, is leaving a really good hitter like that out that everybody else is going to be in. You might be able to differentiate a stack a little bit just by doing that. And that could have, maybe in a slate this size with 2 games, not tournament winning upside, but at least it could get you down to a smaller pool of people that you're tied with. Jacques is a guy that I'll play against a righty almost every time, particularly where he's priced it on FanDuel most of the time. For some reason, FanDuel doesn't seem to like to price up Jacques Peterson. He's always floating in that, like 2,600 to 3,200 range. And I love jamming him in when I can. You mentioned the power, and he's one of those platoon guys. I think all of his home runs last year came against righties, and I love to get him in my lineup there. Another guy that plays well as a lefty in platoon splits with these guys is Corey Seager. So he's another guy that I like to include in that stack.
Yep. So if we look at those guys, that's kind of the ones that pop here. We throw in Max Muncy as well. Max Muncy over the last 2 seasons, 299 isolated power against righties. So the interesting thing that happened there was he was kind of claimed off of the scrap heap. And, hey, Dodgers, they're only going for their 8th straight National League, National League West division title. Goodness gracious, the rich just get richer. And then they still have Justin Turner, AJ Pollock, Will Smith, and I'm forgetting somebody. Oh yeah, Mookie Betts. Only the 2018 AL MVP. Oh my. Wow. Now, if you want to get a little different, look to some of the righties. They'll be less popular. They're still going to be popular against Cueto. And the lefties are also going to be spread throughout the lineup. But don't be afraid to look at some of these guys. Justin Turner's always been phenomenal against same-handed pitching in his career. Will Smith has some nice pop. And then, Mookie Betts, 2018 MVP, leading off. Not a bad place to go. Flipping the switch here on the other side. Sorry, Giants. Talk to me a little bit about Clayton Kershaw. 2.5 implied run total here for the Giants. It sounds like Evan Longoria is going to be on the injured list. Now, a lot of the transactions will happen officially tomorrow. They aren't ready yet for what we've done today because MLB likes to wait for a long time. But Longoria should be out with an oblique issue. Brandon Belt's been dealing with a sore heel, but he may DH. You've got the aging duo of Hunter Pence and Pablo Sandoval. You've got recent acquisition of Wilmer Flores, who may not be as good against lefties as we thought. That seems like a bunch of punch and Judy hitters against Kershaw. Kershaw a little wobbly last year, but still pretty darn good. What do you want to do with Kershaw as arguably the second worst pitcher on this slate? I mean, we could say third best, but let's say second worst.
Yeah, second worst is I think in this scenario, the right way to describe it, which is a little bit weird, but the price looks good. And because of that price on DraftKings, at least, which is the one I've got pulled up right now, he's got pretty high ownership. He's trending for, in our current projection, 62% ownership on DraftKings. So it's a spot that a lot of people are going to be going to. Obviously, that Giants lineup is just garbage. It's full of holes. And it's a team that I like to target quite a bit during the season. They get to you every now and then. They'll have one of those outlier games that kind of pops. And do I see it happening against Kershaw? No, I don't think it's great odds to happen. It could. They could always get to him. And like you mentioned, he was a little bit shaky last year. He put up he had an xFIP of 3.50 compared to his 3.03 ERA. So 3.50 is a solid number still, in a vacuum. But compared to a 3.03 ERA, it's a little bit higher. It suggests that he was benefiting a little bit from luck and from some defense. So he was actually not even as good as the numbers that we saw from him that people were saying, well, a little bit of the gleam has come off of Kershaw now. He's not the guy he was. 26.8% strikeout rate last year, 5.8% walk, still very good. It's a 21% K to walk ratio, so still a lot of quality there. He's a guy that should not have problems with this lineup. You mentioned the one of the best hitters against lefties the past few years in that lineup is Wilmer Flores. Not a guy that you're going to be afraid of on any slate if you're a pitcher, especially if you're Clayton Kershaw. I can't imagine he's going up there towing the rubber, very intimidated by Wilmer. So I see him cruising through this lineup. I definitely want to have a good amount of them, but I want to keep a tight eye on that ownership. And I'm really excited to check out actually Awesemo's top pitchers tool this year. It's going to be similar to the top stacks, and he's going to give a percentage that a pitcher is going to be the highest probability of success on the slate. And that's going to be a great handy tool, particularly on bigger slates when there's a lot of pitchers to look through real quick. But you'll be able to compare their probability of success with their ownership directly right there. So what we're looking for there is a guy whose probability of success outweighs his ownership by a significant margin. I think Clayton Kershaw probably does have a probability of success of over 62% tomorrow, but is his probability of being the highest scoring pitcher on the slate going to be around that? I don't think so. So it might be a spot that I actually end up trying to get under, and it might be a spot where some of that ownership goes toward Johnny Cueto, who's trending well under that. He's 8% on DraftKings right now and 1.3% on FanDuel. So that's a guy that it's going to be easy to get over the field on, and that's where some of that extra Kershaw ownership might go. And then you get a little bit of cost savings there. Kershaw is not the most expensive guy on the slate, but Cueto is super cheap. So if you make that pivot, you've got some more money to spend on bats.
Yeah, and the bats that nobody's ever heard of, they are all over the Giants lineup. Now, there's a few different... I'm not seeing Brandon Belt in any of the projected lineups. I couldn't find an official thing, so maybe they're just going to hold him out of the lefty-lefty matchup. Off the top of my head, I think he's literally something like 4 for 60 with 29 strikeouts against Kershaw. Okay, so that's not really a small sample size. Belt is fine against lefties, just not Kershaw. So here are some of the names that we're looking at. Depending on which site, Wilmer Flores and Hunter Pence are probably going to be your 2, 3, or 4 hitters. We've got Brandon Crawford at the bottom of the lineup. I've seen mixed thoughts here on is Mike Yastrzemski going to play or not. I like Yastrzemski. He came up last year, wait for it, 29-year-old rookie. In less than 30 days, he turns 30. That name sounds familiar. It's because his grandfather's Carl Yastrzemski. Combined, they have over 700 home runs. 22 of them are Mike's as a 29-year-old rookie. Okay, so a little bit of fun there, but you kind of get the point. Now we got Pablo Sandoval, Mauricio Duan, Yolmer Sanchez resurfaces. He's probably going to be batting ninth. Remember, pitchers don't bat. Tyler Heineman, never heard of him. Wow, that's bad. I guess that's the Buster Posey replacement there. Potentially Jalen Davis. Yikes. But there's your differentiation play. The problem is Dodgers have one of the best bullpens in the game. So...
And that's where you're going to run into problems, with that play where, let's try and get some of those guys in and hope that we're going to get 5 innings from Kershaw and they get into the bullpen. Well, you're still dealing with some pretty nasty pitchers out of that Dodgers pen. I don't have their the bullpen stats in front of me, but I mean, they're lights out, and they're going to mow these hitters down. There's just not much to like in this lineup. Just looking at my home run model, I've got a little bit of a different projected lineup than you read down. Just a couple of those guys. But looking through my custom home run model, the guy with the highest probability of hitting a home run is Wilmer. And it's not a true percentage, but my metric that I have on it is 6.87. So usually on the scale that I use there, anything under 10 means you don't truly have a good shot of hitting a home run. You're just one of the better options on your team. So at 6.87, Wilmer being the highest guy on the team, not a good indicator for the power numbers for the Giants tomorrow either. So there's really not a lot of guys that are going to be driving the ball on this team. You see a lot of guys that have not the greatest strikeout numbers, from the projections that I'm using for the season long for our shortened season here. Jalen Davis is going to projected to strike out around 30% of the time. You've got Hunter Pence, 24% of the time. Austin Slater leading off around 27% of the time strikes out. So there's a lot of Ks in this lineup. There's a lot of just holes. really not one that's easy to play. Even if you're stacking, you can't rely on, the next guy's going to come through and provide that correlation that we're looking for in a lineup stack where you're putting a few guys together that are hitting close together in the order. There's just so many holes here. It's difficult to bridge those gaps when these guys aren't going to be coming through. So, one play that just sticks out from memory, and it's not something I looked into today specifically, but I just saw his name was Brandon Crawford. I believe has a decent history against left-handers. So it's something you might want to take a look at if you need a shortstop play at very cheap money. But he's not a guy that I'm going to be jamming in, and neither are many of these other Giants. It's just not a team that I'm going to get to in any gigantic degree. I'll want some of it to help differentiate. I'll use some of it as a secondary stack, maybe 3 guys from this team on in some DraftKings lineups with 5 guys from some of the bigger teams. Could help you differentiate, but you really are asking a lot in that scenario.
All right. Now, again, normally we're not going to go as in-depth in all of this, but hey, this is the first time we've been able to talk about real sports. We usually keep these podcasts in that 30, 35-minute range. This one's going to go a little bit longer. Not as much to say about the next game, mostly going to be about the pitchers because they are daunting. But I do want to point out our friends over there at SuperDraft are running a large contest. The Moonshot, $12 entry fee, $15,000 prize pool, $3,000 to first. Definitely want to check that out. They also have the $2,500 four-seamer. That is a $4 contest, only a 10 entry max. So keep your eyes peeled. There's always some decent overlay here and there on the opening days as people start to fixate on different sites. And then they're coming back with a slightly larger contest in those same formats for Friday. So definitely give them a check out there. If you have not yet signed up with them, you can utilize the promo code Awesemo10 when you create your account, and your first deposit, if it's $10, they will match that $10. If you put in $100 on that deposit, they will give you $20. Again, that's superdraft.io, Awesemo10. The numbers 1 and 0 at the end of Awesemo. Check that out. All right, Terry, the pitching is what it's all about here for these next two. We're talking phenomenal players. You've got Garrett Cole came in second for the Cy Young behind Justin Verlander. Over his last 800 left-handed hitters faced, I had to check this twice, left-handed hitters, he has struck out 42.4%. Wow. That's the platoon advantage against him. And he struck out 42%. In that same time, righties, he struck out at 32% for those years. Those figures are first and 10th amongst all players with at least 70 innings over the last 2 years. Oh my. Nationals no longer have Rendon. Obviously, no Bryce Harper. Ryan Zimmerman sitting out the season. It's not quite the same lineup that won the World Series. You've got Juan Soto, who's solid. Howie Kendrick is okay. Eric Thames, recent addition. He'll probably be playing every day, DH or first base. They're going to give Howie Kendrick, he's going to kind of pop around the field, maybe a little bit of outfield, a tiny bit of infield, and then he's going to DH. And then you've got Adam Eaton. Those are kind of the guys I'm okay with. But good God, who's going to get hits against Garrett Cole? And then you've got Scherzer on the other side. Let's see, 3 Cy Young Awards, 2 no-hitters, a 20 strikeout game. In each of the last 7 seasons, he has finished in the top 5 for the Cy Young voting. He won 3 of them. I think he has 2 second places, but he's been top 5 in each of the last 7 years. That's spanning his AL career and NL career. I don't really know what to say about the hitters against these 2 hurlers.
Are there hitters in this game?
Aaron Hicks is my air quotes, sneaky home run call. Sneaky, but okay. That's really it. Just Scherzer strikes out righties at 39% of the time. Lefties can kind of get him a little bit for power. That's proportional. I think he gave up like 24 home runs last year. That's not that many. When you consider how awesome he is, yeah, it's a little bit more for a guy that has an ERA that's usually flirting around 2. But that's the only thing you get is a solo shot, maybe. And it's solo because he doesn't put anybody on base. So I don't know what to do with this information. Makes things very tough. Oh, wait, I know. Let's play the Dodgers. Damn it. That's what everybody's going to do. Finish this up here. What do you got from this game? Oh, and by the way, a little bit of weather. I need to call that out. I live in the DC area. We've been having late afternoon and early evening thunderstorms. the last couple days, they have been roving thunderstorms, meaning that it's not been sustained. They should be able to get the game in. It could be delayed. Who knows? Remember, there's nobody at the park. No reason for the Nationals to screw around because it's not Austin Voth or Joe Ross Jr. Taking the mound. It's Max effing Scherzer. So they're going to try to get this game in. But we could see him with a 4-inning outing if the rains come and they give him a 20 or 25-minute delay. So all sorts of variables here. But what do you got? Wrap us up here with what is the first game of the night, but we save it for the last.
Going back to the early game. So yeah, I think you just put your finger right on the one possible question mark about these pitchers, other than just the baseball gods throwing variance at us. It would be the weather. You get that pop-up storm, and you get, like you said, even a 25-minute delay. With the way that we expect these pitchers to be protected this year, a guy like Scherzer, a guy like Cole, they might not put that investment back on the mound after even cooling off for even just 20, 25 minutes. So if we see one of these games delay, that could be slate breaking. That could be something that could really, really change the dynamic of what happens here. Get some of those bullpen arms in. Yanks bullpen is a little bit better than the Nats bullpen. But they're still, not the greatest arms, in the low leverage guys that they'll be throwing out there. The rosters are a little bit deeper to start the season. Every team's going to come into the season 30-man rosters for the first 2 weeks, so they're going to have some extra arms in the bullpen. So in that event, we might see a non-pitchers duel, but we can't count on that. We can never really plan for rain other than avoiding games that we know are going to be rained out. So rain delays, it's not a thing that we can focus on. We have to assume that these guys are going to go their full complement, 5-6 innings at worst. And really the pitching, it looks dominant. A game like this where everything lines up to be a pitcher's duel, the baseball gods are probably going to throw us a 12-11 extra inning game, just the way that things go. But odds are we're going to see a lights out pitchers duel, and maybe one of these teams gets to the bullpen in the 7th or the 8th inning, and we see a low scoring game. And you just have to hope that if you are playing these teams, you pick off the right guys and you pick off the right home runs. Maybe if you're playing a one-off, you take a guy like Aaron Hicks that you mentioned. He's got a reasonable home run metric in my model. He's about the middle of the pack, on the higher end actually of the middle of the pack for the Yankees, hitting in the middle of that lineup. There's going to be, if people are getting on opportunity, it's an RBI spot right in the heart of that order. So I like a play like that. For only 2,600 on FanDuel, it's not bad as a one-off if you're playing a stack of other guys. Getting to a full stack of this lineup is probably of the Yankees lineup is probably going to be the second chalkiest spot on the slate. So maybe look towards some Nationals. Maybe look at trying to catch some variance against Garrett Cole. Like you said, they're diminished from where they were, but there still are very talented bats. Juan Soto is a killer. He's going to be an absolute superstar, up-and-comer. 267 ISO projected this year. He is just a lights-out hitter. Has a decent power metric facing a guy like Cole, as a lefty, which we know he strikes out a lot of. But Soto was, for a power hitter, somewhat able to limit strikeouts, and could be another guy that you might want to start a stack around. The question mark is the guys below him in the lineup. Howie Kendrick, we know what we're pretty much getting from Howie. He's more of a platoon play, but we're going to see him starting all the time against the right-handers. And then you get into the guys like Eric Dames and Carter Kaboom. I like Kaboom's upside as going forward, but not really in this spot. He's not a guy I want to trust. A guy I do kind of like, and maybe it's a sneaky play to differentiate a stack from a speed perspective, is Victor Robles down at the bottom of the lineup. We never really like going to 9 hitters just because you're basically killing a plate appearance and you're taking down your opportunity. But in this kind of a situation with 2 games on the slate, we've got to get different. We've got to get weird about things. So maybe you build a little wraparound with a ton of speed in it with Victor Robles, Trey Turner, and Adam Eaton, go back around to the top of the order, try and pick off some base hits. Maybe they're able to run on Cole. Gary's got a great arm behind the plate, but his defense is a little shaky. So sometimes we see balls in the dirt. The guys are able to run on them. So you might see them generate some opportunity with their legs, and you might see some cheap runs that way, and maybe pick off enough cheap points to at least get your lineup in the money, which is on a slate like this, maybe the best we can hope for.
All right, gamers, with that, we're wrapping it up, but you're going to get Laffy, Adam, and Josh Engelman on the MLB Strategy Show Thursday. I think that will go off at noon, and then you're going to have the MLB Live Before Lock. That is going to be Laffy, Jake Hari, and Alex Baker. Awesemo himself. Friday, we're looking at the strategy show with Adam and Josh, and then mixing things up, it's going to be Chris Spags and Alex Baker on Live Before Lock. And then we've got shows through the weekend, 11 a.m. on Saturday. You'll get myself and Adam Scherer on the early bird or on the strategy show. And then you'll get Jake and Josh up till lock. Keep note, there's the main slate on Saturday is going to be at 4 o'clock. There are 6 4 o'clock games. I'm going off memory. I think 3 5 o'clock games, a 7 o'clock, and a 9 o'clock. After that, most of the other Saturdays seem to start at 6 or 7. So it's going to be an odd one for this first Saturday. Do pay attention to that. And then, of course, we're going to be on Sunday, noon up until lock. That will be myself and a rotating cast of Adam, Jake, and I believe Greg, who is one of our new guys going to be making a debut. You've seen some of his writing and some of his other work, but you can check that out. And then just last call to action, a reminder, promo code Manfred, as in Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, that gets you half off your first month of Awesemo MLB premium content. That's $25 for 31 days. That code expires on Friday. With that, you can follow me at EMac DFS. Terry, what is your Twitter?
I am at DigitalB21, DigitalB21.
There we go. And it, of course, is Awesemo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.